I think this is actually a pretty solid way to make it so the staff is still like super strong, but it's not like ridiculous, especially if we get better and better upgrades in the future. Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on the fractured staff nerf that has been proposed. So we're going to put some PVM kills in the background, probably put some little like pictures up on screen, but pretty much just going to be me talking. So put it in the background and hopefully you enjoy the video. Alright guys, so to start this video, I just want to say a couple little things. I'm not really going to be using any hard numbers for this video because I don't think it really applies to like the concept that I'm talking about. I'm not really talking about like the current game, I'm just talking about the game as a whole, like on a longer scale. So I don't think like numbers really apply to that concept so much. Also, the creator named Rain made a really good video comparing the fractured staff to the bow of the Guardian, which I'm going to put in the description. I think it was really good. It was really informative, and it shows like maybe a more average-ish player's level of damage that they're going to achieve if they're like slightly above average, right? He's not doing any like crazy stuff getting his kills, so I think it was a pretty good video comparing the two top-tier weapons. And I think that is a much better place to go for like hard numbers than this video if that's what you're looking for. And the reason that I'm not going to use hard numbers is because I think as long as content is created that whatever top tier of damage doesn't just absolutely ruin, then it's fine, right? And I think we're at that place right now with like the fractured staff and the bow at like places like Zamorak or High Enraged Glaycore. Like the weapons feel good there. They don't feel like they're super OP that they just ruin the content, right? Like I think we're in a pretty good place for that. So I'm not entirely sure why we're trying to nerf the damage so significantly of the staff right now. It just seems like unnecessary. Which leads me kind of to the second point and like the conclusion-ish of this video. And it's, I think if you're going to nerf the staff like what you're proposing in the post, which I will also put in the description so you can look at it and on screen here. But yeah, I think if you're going to nerf the power of the staff, you have to put something in place to like rebuff it for the current level of content to make it feel good to use still, because I think the nerfs that you've proposed like make the staff feel kind of meh to use, just like not good. The damage nerf is going to be huge because it's not only a nerf to your damage, it's a nerf to your adrenaline, and it's a nerf to your consistency. Like I don't really see this nerf is going to be pretty big in my opinion. Like losing the recursive-ish like they're not really recursive, right? It recasts them sometimes, but losing those extra critical hits or extra auto attacks from critical hits really loses you a lot of consistency, because that can also crit sometimes. Like it doesn't happen a ton, but you're spamming so many critical hits out that it's like a ripple of damage where like the more you're critting, the more ripples you're generating to get more damage. So, but they don't last forever, right? Like the way that Mod Sponge makes it seem in this post is like it's infinite damage. Like you crit and then it creates another auto that crits and it just keeps going forever, but it'll fizzle out after like usually like 1 or 2 extra autos max. But the adrenaline you get from that is massive. Like getting that extra adrenaline can save your rotations. Everybody talks about the inconsistency issues with the staff, and that really does help like make it more consistent, even though like the concept of it is like inconsistent at its core, where you're just relying on critical hits. But like with the way that Magic works with like the ring switches and greater conch switch, you can really like make your rotations work almost every single time. I feel like the consistency thing, it's not that inconsistent with a good rotation, although if you just never get a crit, it is kind of bad. But that rarely happens. But yeah, so let's get into the first part. He says the auto attack problem. He says that because it's an auto attack, every time your your fractured staff special casts an auto, it uses runes for that, and it makes it have an absurd upkeep cost. And I don't really think that's a problem. I mean, it's a top tier weapon, and if you're using it at a low end boss, like he states, that's kind of on you. Like it's expected to lose money at like a low end boss, I guess, if you're just like trying to get the pet Or I don't know why you'd be like spamming fractured staff specs at places you don't really need to, if it's like a super low end boss. But yeah, I don't know. You usually make money at these places anyway. Like Vindicta, I'm sure you could staff spec and still make money. So I don't know. It seems a little weird to bring that up. I think the real reason would be like the rune usage. Like it uses a ton of runes, which maybe is an issue with the spells. But I also think it's an issue with rune crafting. Like if you made rune crafting less tedious to train, because it is awful. Rune crafting sucks to train. It's so bad. But if you made that less awful to train, I think it would, I think more people would do it, and it would maybe help fix the problem. So how would you fix that? I would probably put the rune crafting catalysts on boss drop tables, maybe replace some stone spirits, like low tier stone spirits with a couple of these things, like 10 of them or something. I think that's a pretty decent solution to like get more runes in the game. But also I'd probably make it so if you load a rune crafting preset, it just automatically loads the pouches. That's the problem with the rune crafting. It makes it so annoying to train. It's so bad. And the fix is like so simple, but you just won't do it apparently. I don't know if it's too hard. You could do it old school did and give us like a just brand new item where you combine all the pouches. I don't know, but it's really annoying. It sucks to train rune crafting. If you made it better, it won't be so bad. I think that's all you need to do to like solve this issue. I don't know if necromancy maybe uses a ton of runes and that's like the real problem here. You know, I don't know, but definitely seems a little weird to say that it just costs a lot to use. I mean, sure, it costs a lot to use, but you make a ton of money with it. Like, that's the whole point. Or it makes your kills super fast. He also says the damage value is hard to adjust because it's tied to your auto attacks. And I think this is true because if you wanted to change the actual damage value, you'd have to change the auto attack value, which is where all of your damage is drawn, and changing that probably not a great idea, obviously. So I'm not entirely sure. I think turning it into an ability isn't the worst idea to solve this issue, but I don't think we should be getting rid of recursive hits from it then. Like, just make it so if that ability crits, it generates another one. I think removing the recursive nature is a bad thing. We're nowhere near infinite. Like, it's weird how he says that. I don't think he understands how the staff works. It's like a ripple of damage, where every time you crit, you create a ripple that hits like 1 or 2 more times maybe. And eventually they fizzle out. It doesn't just infinitely go on forever. Even if you had like 60% crit rate, which we are nowhere close to right now, you still wouldn't have infinite damage. I just don't understand why he's saying what he's saying about it, where it's like approaching infinite damage. He says it somewhere in here, I believe, or he said it, yeah. In the second portion here, he's saying the damage is going towards infinite, and that's just not how the staff works. It doesn't just keep generating infinite autos. Like, even with really high crit chance, it wouldn't. Like, you have to be approaching like extremely high critical hit chances to make it go infinite. And that only happens for the ability after Greater Conch. Like, you can't just spam those abilities. And I don't know what you're proposing for critical hit chance that it's gonna put it from where it is now to like near infinite in the future. I mean, I don't know what you guys have proposed for that, but yeah, I don't know. This seems like wrong. Like, I don't think it approaches infinite damage. The critical hits eventually wear out from that one individual first one. It's not, unless your RNG is just crazy good, but that doesn't really happen. And that kind of like, that's like the inconsistency issues with the staff, which people make to seem out like a big deal, I think. I don't think it's that big of a deal, to be honest. You can like alleviate a lot of that with a good rotation. Like, if you put in more effort, you kind of get rid of those inconsistencies. Like, your damage is kind of peaked out on the staff, and all you can do is have better rotations to make them more consistent, in my opinion, because the damage is pretty much peaking at this point. Like, we've peaked the damage we can get. So it's just fine-tuning rotations to get more consistency, get more damage out. My rotations are nowhere near god tier or anything, but I do find my rotations to be like incredibly consistent because of the way that I do them with Greater Conch switches and stuff to like really keep them consistent. I don't waste my limitlesses and stuff. So I think there are things you could do as a player to like improve, and everyone just acts like the staff is just completely like brain dead, and you just like hit one button the whole time, which you can, but it's not that great if you're just sitting there like ABS specking and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't think it's approaching infinite. It just doesn't seem like that. I kind of mentioned this before, but he says that the damage the staff is hitting is reaching the limits of what he's comfortable with. And maybe if you literally crit everything, but that doesn't happen again. Like, even if we had pretty high crit chances, like even probably around like 55 to 60% would maybe be like where that limit would be. Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't work like that really. Where you're hitting infinite damage. So let's get into the changes that he has proposed. So he's saying the staff will no longer do auto attack damage, and it will instead be an ability. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I think this makes it kind of goofy where you could literally just camp dual wields now with the staff. I think one of the cool parts about the staff right now, and one of those like skill gap things, is having the staff on for like the most damage during the spec, but also getting those G-Conks in. And I think that's a skill that, like, you know, it makes it a little bit more difficult to use the staff, whereas I think this is just going to make it way easier to use and just more consistent, where you can just like use the staff spec and then just do some rotation over there that's not even tied into like anything involving the staff. That kind of goofy, but he also says this will make it so it'll use no runes, which I guess is fine, but I don't think the rune usage is really all that big of a problem. What else is he saying? He's saying the projectile is no longer sent from the player to the target as expected from an auto attack. So I think he's saying, oh, this is another thing. This makes it so you can 4-tick while you're under the staff spec. And I really like, I think we did a good job of like taking 4-ticking out of the game, and for them to make a change that basically adds 4-ticking back into the Magic meta, I just don't think that's a good idea. Most players probably don't want to be 4-ticking. I mean, it's super high input for like a very small amount of damage. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see why they would want to bring that back in if they spent all this time trying to get rid of it. It's a little stupid if you ask me, but you know, what am I to say? So he says the special attack will be a little green lightning animation every time you crit that will cast on the enemy and make it do ability damage. So he says the special attack can no longer trigger off itself, removing the recursive nature. That's like the whole point of the staff. You're going to have to do a pretty significant damage buff to bring this damage back in, because it does add a fair amount of damage to the staff spec. But that damage is definitely good for the game right now, if you ask me, for like top end bosses. I don't know. Maybe they don't think so. He's saying that the damage will be 60 to 120%. So what is that, 80% damage? That's a pretty big nerf to the amount of damage that we're going to be seeing. It's going to be 80% of what it was before, which is going to be a pretty significant nerf to the damage. Or it says average of 90, I guess. Must be slightly weighted higher or something. But yeah, average of 90% damage, even if it's like weighted a little bit higher. Even if that's the case, I don't know. I feel like just artificially nerfing the damage and getting rid of the recursive nature is just going to make the staff almost useless, and it's just going to make every single person switch to range. I mean, that's so like one of the things I really don't like about this nerf is this is one of the first times in a very long time where we have had two combat styles that have actually been top tier and like competitive with each other, and now they just want to nerf the staff. And that's why I said at the beginning, don't nerf the staff. if you're not going to give us something to replace that nerf. Because like this is the first time in a very long time where we have had two styles that are actually competitive, and it's actually kind of like fun to like play with the two, you know, figure out where one's better than the other. It like, I don't know why we finally got to the point where we have like multiple styles we can use, and now you're just nerfing magic. It's like, it seems like such terrible timing. Like, as long as I can remember playing this game, there's always just been one combat style that's just miles ahead. Like pre-EOC, it was melee, was nuts, right? And then we had magic. Range was terrible forever. We had melee get greater barge, and then melee was meta for a while. That was only one style. And then range got G-Rico and the Eldritch crossbow and Hydrix bolts, and that became meta. And then we got the fractured staff. And it's always only been one thing, right, that has been like just miles ahead of the rest. And every other style was just useless. And it's probably by design if you saw it was like all three different styles. But I think it would be much better for the game to have multiple styles like actually be competitive with each other instead of this nonsense where only one is. Not to mention for them to get to that point and then you just artificially nerf one. Like, what is that about? How are you going to have two styles that are competitive and then just nerf the shit out of one so everyone switches to the other thing for no reason? Like, again, if you're going to nerf it, make sure you put something in to like rebuff this nerf, because, or like redo how magic works. But this is going to nerf the staff significantly and just ruin it, basically, compared to the bow. Like, the bow already does pretty good damage, as we've seen in Rain's video, right? It's weird to nerf the staff just artificially. Like, I don't think that's a good idea. Definitely shouldn't do that. So that brings me to the second half of this video, which is going to be how I would probably change the staff. So we see that the recursive nature of the staff is a problem, right? Like, that is one of the biggest issues I do see with the staff, is that eventually if the crit chance does get really high, this could be a serious problem, right? Like, it could happen where it does become near infinite. I don't know if you've ever went to a dummy and turned on the max hit mode where you're always critting. Your staff goes fucking crazy. It's actually nuts. But I don't know how you fix it exactly. And this would be the best way I could see to fix it, where you still keep some of that extra damage and ability to critical hit, but it's not infinite. And I think keeping it as an auto attack would be a good idea. So this is what I would do. You would turn the staff, or you'd make the staff get a passive effect. So, and that passive would be on the screen here. Okay, so on the screen here, you can see what I would make the passive of the fractured staff. And that would be that each cast of the FSOA ability that gets cast when you critical hit, each cast of that gets 1 stack. When you reach 5 stacks, an auto is fired, and that's pretty much it, right? Or that 5 stacks could be any number, right? Like, it is whatever. It could be like 3 if you want to keep it more powerful, right? Like, that would be like a balance issue. But I think this is like an interesting way to solve a lot of the issues. It, one, turns it into an ability, so you're not spamming autos all over the place and like wasting all these runes. It makes it so it's not just like infinite, where like everything's just spamming all over the place. It makes it so you can't 4TAA, because when you reach 5 stacks, it shoots an auto attack, and it retains some of the ability, but within a reasonable bounds of like blood barrage, AoEing, and healing. Because currently it's a little ridiculous, right? Like, you just like omni power for like 10k life points. But I think this makes it so you still are rewarded for wearing the staff correctly and switching for your G-Conks instead of just like camping that. Makes it non-infinite. It makes it so you still get the ability of blood barrage or whatever spell you're using. I think this is actually a pretty solid way to make it so the staff is still like super strong, but it's not like ridiculous, especially if we get better and better upgrades in the future. Maybe look into doing something like this. I think this is a pretty solid way to update the staff if you think it's a problem, I guess. Oh, get some water. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this. I think this is a pretty decent way to fix the staff, to be honest with you, where it retains like all of the good things that it has now, and maybe in the future, once we get a few upgrades, solves like a lot of the problems that the staff currently has. Yeah, I think this is better, like way better than what you're changing here. Like, give it a passive that you're rewarded for actually wearing the staff. So then it's not just like an EOF weapon, right? Like, I don't think we want that with our top tier weapons, right? Like the Zuck sword is super weird that you just whip that thing into an EOF and that's it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this. I think this is a pretty interesting way to fix the staff. I like it a lot more than just ruining it, which what he's doing. And yeah, in the background of this video, you can see I have some Solak kills. I had probably my best one, which is a sub 7, which I had a really good like performance or whatever, I guess, and like staff specs. And then I've also had some that are much slower. I've had some like 8 like 30s. And that's not only with bad staff specs, also bad performance, and they kind of happen with each other, right? Like you screw up and then you're like, you know, but yeah, I think trying to say, like from my own personal experience, trying to say that the fracture staff is like super inconsistent and like it just peaks at like insane levels of damage for top end content really doesn't seem true unless you're like insane at the game, right? Like I think I'm like slightly above average, well not slightly, I think I'm like above average or whatever at like PVMing in this game, not like super crazy or anything. And yeah, like it seems like the staff does like pretty like reasonable levels of damage, right? Like I'm not just blowing Solak out of the water and skipping everything, even though I'm skipping a lot of the stuff, and like that's in my best kills, right? Where I, like do get lucky. Not every kill is like that. But yeah, I don't know. The problems that the staff has, maybe it's too easy to use. Maybe you could put a cooldown on the ABS spec if you think that would solve part of the problem of it like being too easy to use, but I don't think that's much of a problem. What else? Honestly, I would say do this with the staff. Fix melee. Like, don't waste your development time like screwing with like the staff too much if like you don't need to. It just fix melee. You know, it is what it is. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. If you like this kind of video where I'm just like talking, maybe putting some stuff up on screen, let me know. I don't know. I think these are big changes that the mods have been proposing lately. And yeah, I don't know if I'll keep doing stuff like this if they don't keep making like questionable changes, in my opinion. But yeah, it's just my thoughts. If you like the video, give it a like, I guess. See you in the next one. Later, guys.